One of the inevitabilities of becoming a bit more popular is that more and more people are discovering your show, obviously, and they want to reach out to you. And so as a consequence, you will receive many emails, you'll receive lots of direct messages through your social media platforms, all of these kind of things. And it's great. That's part of the package. When you get into podcasting, you hope that you reach an audience and you hope that what you are saying and sharing registers with people and that it makes them interested enough to want to take part somehow or to ask questions in some way. The kind of emails that one gets, particularly on a podcast where they talk about magic, can run the gamut. You have very odd requests as to, can I do this thing when this thing is happening, or things like this. There was this odd sound in my house. Is that a spirit? To, hey, should I do this ritual to make this person fall in love with me? And the answer to that one is usually always no. But some emails rise more frequently than others do, and you receive them far more often than others. And they tend to be the same kind of email. But for myself, I have a podcast in which I saw that there was a niche being unfilled from most occult podcasts out there. And that was one in which people who were beginning in magic or who were curious in magic could come to, and it wouldn't be alarming and it wouldn't be overly complicated. I wanted to talk to people about kinds of magic and aspects of magic to be accessible for people so that it's not overwhelming, and to provide them a ton of sources and places to go and directions in which they can head. So, I will definitely say that at this point, the number one email that I get is, how do I get started? People always want to know how to get started in magic. And so, I mean, you've already downloaded the episode. It's right there. You know what this episode is going to be about just from the title alone. Originally, I wanted this to be a Patreon episode for people that would sign up to my Patreon account. Then I thought about that and it's like, that's kind of like a shitty move. Just to be like, I'll tell you exactly. Oh, hey, all 900 people that have emailed me. Guess what? You can get my how to get started advice if you sign up to my Patreon. It's only $7 a month, which is pretty cheap. I'm just saying. But as I looked at the month of January, and with a lot of people being away on vacation or just taking time after Christmas, and it's actually quite hard to find a lot of guests, at least the ones that I really wanted to talk to. So I just said, let's nip this in the bud. Let's not keep it on Patreon. This has to be one of those episodes that I probably should have done way earlier, but it is the beginning of 2022. Let's kick the new year off with something that a lot of people really want to know, which is, how does one get started with magic? So I want everyone to grab a nice cup of hot cocoa and take a seat. Because I, Douglas Batchelor, on What Magic Is This? I'm going to take you through how to start doing magic. Let's begin with a question. So the question is, who is this episode for exactly? Well, I would like to think that this episode is for everybody, not just those who have not done a single spell, or just those who are curious, or those who are like, you know what, now's the time. 2022 is the year that I become a practical magician. But I think that hopefully there is enough in this episode for those who have been doing magic for a long period of time to get, you know what? I actually want to give that a try. Or, you know what, this is an interesting idea. It's worth contemplating, and I might even involve it in the magic that I do. So hopefully this episode won't just be one of those episodes that I put out, which is a response that I have to people that keep emailing me the question of where do I start. I should hope that people will find something lovely with this, no matter what part of their magical journey they're on. Which brings me to something else that is very, very important, and it should be said far more often than it actually is. But here we go, and please keep this in mind throughout your entire journey of magic, whether it's just something you do for 6 months or if it's something you do for the rest of your life, which I really hope it will be, because that's why I'm doing this show. I want more magicians. Anyways, here is the advice, and this comes via my guest on the Wilhelm Reich episode, which would be Dan Lowe, who I believe got it from the author of Condensed Chaos, Phil Hine. This is it. There are no experts in magic, only people who have been doing it for longer. Let me repeat. There are no experts in magic, only people who have been doing it longer. Every once in a while, I'll get an email where somebody says, Doug, I'm appealing to you and to your expertise. And I have to say, whoa, slide out of the saddle, cowboy. I am not an expert in magic. I've been doing it for a while. There's people that know more than me for sure. There's people that know less than me for sure. I'm pretty specialized in the things that I know. I feel like I have a pretty base knowledge and understanding of certain metaphysics and religions and whatnot, but I also know very little. I know it sounds like I know a lot, but I also know very little. There are giant blind spots within my knowledge, which goes for pretty much everybody else that I know involved in magic. Some people are more specialized in certain things, like say grimoires or what passes for Rosicrucianism and these kind of things, but nobody is an expert on magic itself. So please keep this in mind no matter what happens. Yes, there's going to be people that know more than you. There will always be these people. A lot of times these are the people to look up to, but don't take their word as gospel, especially mine, right? I'm still young. I'm 38 years old. I have so much more to learn. And truthfully, I've said it before, there is not enough lifetime to learn magic. There's so much. And that's what's awesome about it. But there are no experts. Also, for the most part, I try not to give too much advice. This episode, however, will be a bit advice heavy. So I want you to think of this episode, because I did ask you to, sit down, grab yourself some hot chocolate and listen for a little bit. Pull up a chair, pull up a stool, if you will, or whatever you want to sit on. It's Liberty Hall. You can spit on the carpet and call the cat a bastard, whatever. But just take this episode as you would an uncle who has, they've seen some shit, but perhaps you don't see them very often, right? They come by maybe once every year or every couple of years, but you know that what they're saying has some kind of gravity to it, but you're still going to do what you do, right? Like, you're just like, wow, that's an interesting thing that they said. This uncle of mine. I'm not going to do that exactly, but it's still interesting to ponder. So that's the mindset I want you to have when you listen to this episode. Here's the thing, though. What is meant by doing magic? This is something that I think a lot of people get tripped up on. And there's this term that gets thrown around way too often, and one that I don't like at all. It is the term armchair magician. And I talked about it a little bit on the second episode I've ever done, which was my spells episode. But what is exactly meant by doing magic? Does that mean that one has to be actively doing spells to consider doing magic? Are these armchair magicians so-called because of the fact that they don't do these spells and they just read about magic and they learn about magic and they're not actually getting off their tuchus and doing some waving of wands and tracing of circles? As mentioned, I think that this armchair magician thing has to go away. I think that, research is of itself a practice, and I will still call armchair magicians, I call them magicians. Actually, I have something that I'll say that might piss off a few people. Let's not call them armchair magicians. I think that they should consider themselves occult philosophers. We'll just call them occult philosophers. And I say this not to be mean in any way, shape, or form. Philosophy's fun. It's not really my bag. But those who like to philosophize about magic, let's replace armchair magician, right? We get this term most of the time when we think of occult philosophy. We think of Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy. And for the most part, or at least according to people like Frank Clausen in his Transformations of Magic book, which is one of my favorite books of all time, truthfully, is that a lot of the people who had these books, they had them for basically research and rhetorical purposes. That not a lot of them had them for magic, right? Some people did, of course. John Dee had copy of it, and some of the, I think, what was her name? Oh, yes. Anne Watts was her name. This was brought up in Philip Ullman's book, England's First Demonologist, about Reginald Scott, the author of Discovery of Witchcraft. Anyways, I'm speaking about a lot of books and a lot of stuff here. The point is that this cunning woman, she was sleeping in the woods just outside of London, or I believe it was a park in London, and she had a copy of the 3 books of occult philosophy. Anyways, a lot of the time, the people who had this book by Agrippa, the book of occult philosophy, they weren't really using it for magic. It was just there, and it was there to read. So you're no longer an armchair magician. You are an occult philosopher. And there's honestly nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to stick with this for like a little bit, because this show will be mostly for people that want to get started in practical magic, and even perhaps something like witchcraft. Everybody's got a different perspective on witchcraft. Aidan Wachter just produced a really nice book called Changeling, in which he, in a way, defines the qualities that makes up his witchcraft. It's well worth seeking out. I'll return to Aidan Wachter in a little bit. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about these occult philosophers. Hey, there is nothing wrong with just being interested in this stuff, right? There's nothing wrong with just reading about magic and the history and these spells and stuff like that. That's really cool. Hey, I'm like you. I'm a seeker as well for the most part. I like to read about this stuff. It is part of my journey. I tend to involve spells and whatnot in my life. A lot of the times when because I have a Patreon and I have a Discord server on that Patreon, a lot of people will log on to the Discord and they have to introduce themselves, and they'll say, you know what, I don't really do practical magic, but I'm just here for seeking. I'm seeking truth. And that's cool. I would suggest a couple of things, though, if you are this variety of occult philosopher, is what exactly is truth? Maybe kick the idea around a little bit. I mean, it's a hell of a question. And I would investigate this idea of epistemology. It's nice to philosophize as much as one wants. There's the Greek classics. There's all the way the Germans, the 16th, 17th, and 18th century Germans, 19th century Germans even. Philosophy is great, but look into epistemology and how we arrive at our way of being and how we judge what is actually truth. I would do that as well. There's something else as well. I would say that if you are this seeker of truth, this occult philosopher, I think you need to understand that, yes, there is something different than a fairly materialist world. That's why you're here, right? I'm pretty sure you are like, the picture and map doesn't seem correct. I'm trying to see something different. I'm trying to investigate something different. And I really hope that your journey as far as being an occult philosopher involves you thinking about these different perspectives and accepting one that fits your paradigm a little bit better, and then you can switch it out and change things. You can Hermeticism or Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, all of these kind of things, right? Esotericism is cool. The study of the occult and esotericism is cool. The things that are obscure, these weird, different bits of knowledge. And I will put up in the show notes a link to 3 lectures, which I think basically go through at least the Western history of esotericism and occulted knowledge and occult philosophy. I'll just say that. It's by Gary Lockman, an author who I have brought up time and time and time again. Yeah, he has a series of 3 lectures. They're all about esotericism. They're basically from his book, The Secret Teachers of the Western World. That is a book that is well worth getting, and I can't suggest this highly enough. I think it's so wonderful that these 3 one-hour lectures were put out, and I suggest them for anybody because Gary goes through all of it, and it's breathtaking. And if any one thing interests you, it allows you to research it a little bit further. However, I will say this, a lot of these authors, and they're fairly old. We'll talk about somebody, say, like Eliphas Levi. Their history of magic is entirely spurious. It's not true. That was later picked up by like the Golden Dawn and by Aleister Crowley. I talk about this a lot in some of my episodes that I put out on Patreon. It's just that the history promulgated by a lot of these sources, Golden Dawn, Levi, Crowley, it's not the actual history of magic, all this highfalutin Rosicrucianism, and that there's this one doctrine of magic that was Egyptian, and these adepts throughout history have kept it secret and occulted. It's not true. That's kind of Western magic's 19th century overarching history, which unfortunately is more of a mythology than it is truth. And that's mythology is great. I love myths. They're wonderful. You can use this in any way, shape, or form that you want. All power to you. It is a bit of a bit of an ad campaign for secret societies and stuff like that, and the Rosicrucians, who may or may not have existed. Whatever. It doesn't matter. All I'm trying to say is that as exciting as they are, do not confuse it for the actual history of magic, which I think is far more interesting. Cunning folk and saint worship and all this awesome stuff, which I like to talk about on my podcast and in my Patreon. So for simplicity's sake, and this will be very, very reductive, I'm going to say that, there's the occult philosophers. Godspeed, do whatever you need. And then there's practical magicians, practical witchcraft, the people, doing rituals and spells and performances and ceremonies, etc., etc. I'm mainly going to be talking to this group and people who want to begin doing this kind of stuff. With all of that out of the way, we're 18 minutes into this one. Let's actually talk about how to begin doing magic. First things first, and this might be the most crucial thing of all. Why the fuck do you want to do magic? Seriously, why? What on earth compels you to want to do weird shit to make weird shit happen? Are you bored? Do you have some kind of, social shortcomings that you think by doing magic will make it all better? You might be a little bit more cool or mysterious. Like what? What on earth is making you want to say, yes, this sounds like something I need to do, and it needs to be a part of my life right now? And if I sound really flippant, there's a reason for that, because you have to be brutally honest here. If you do not start as you mean to go, i.e. being brutally, crushingly honest with yourself, then you're doomed and you failed. You've failed right out of the gate. The gates opened and you stumbled and you fucked up. Why the hell do you want to be a magician? Is it because you saw some cartoon or something like that where magic was brought up and you're like, oh, that's interesting, let's give it a shot? If it is, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you acknowledge it, as long as you say, yes, this is something that I find interesting. Be honest. For your sake, be honest. Is it because maybe you want more money? Somebody on Twitter or Instagram was like, I'm a money magician, a money witch, money wizard. And you're like, oh, they look like they're living in a pretty okay apartment or condo. I want to do that. Okay. That's what brought you here. That's what brought you to my podcast. Who knows? Or it's the thing that makes you want, I need that. I want to be that. Okay. Be honest with yourself and write it down. Write it down. Put it on, I don't know, put it on some old scroll paper you bought from some new age store in your city or something like that, or just from a notebook. Write it down. Make it plain as day. This is why I want to do magic. I want to fuck people, or I want money. Here you go. Scribble, scribble, scribble. It's down on paper. Because truthfully, money and sex are what a lot of spells are about. We can look back in history like, oh, yeah, as Sam Block has once said, magic has always been about getting paid and getting laid. And there's truth to that. There is absolute truth to that. So I want you to be very honest with yourself. Right at the start. Why are you doing this? Make sure it's something physical that you can see. Make sure it's something you can hold. Because later on down the line, you're going to need to dig this out and you're going to see, oh, is that still important to me? Is that still what I want? Or you might laugh about it. Oh, shit, how misguided was I back then? But it is important to ask yourself why you started out. Particularly as you keep going on down the line, and you might find a moment where magic seems less interesting to you. Like, why I'm buying hundreds of dollars worth of books. I'm not really doing the things. I'm becoming an occult philosopher, which I'm kind of okay with, but I'm also kind of not okay with. If you have something you can look back at to see how all this skullduggery and tomfoolery got started, I think that's pretty important. Because I will have to say, the number one problem, and this is a fairly modern problem, particularly within magic, and by new I mean it's less than 200 years old, is this idea of not believing what you're doing. You will doubt that magic is real, that any of this is real, that you're just doing some stupid bullshit, and you're spending a lot of money on it. You're going to need to remind yourself why you started down this road, because it might also help you when you look at this piece of paper that showed you your initial spark, whether it's worth it anymore, whether you still want to do it. It's also quite awesome to see how you've changed, how much your ideals and morals and techniques and just how you see the world changes, particularly from the outset. So you've done that. You've written down why exactly you want to enter the Temple of Magic and be somebody who talks about really crazy, weird stuff, and also, as mentioned earlier, do weird stuff and have weird stuff happen. What next? Where do you go? I think I have to talk a little bit about orders. And this is something which it's fairly big in Western circles, or at least you'll read about magical orders, things like the Golden Dawn or the Ordo Temple Orientis, which was, 19th century. These were 19th century concepts for the most part, this idea of orders. And some of these are still around. Some of these orders are still kicking. I mean, the original Golden Dawn is no longer around, but there's a lot of groups that say that they're Golden Dawn and they're not. They're just not. Sorry, the Golden Dawn is done. These orders are not the Golden Dawn. Anyways, do you need to join one of these orders to learn magic? I can't really answer that for you. I know some people who get a lot out of being part of an order. A couple of my guests have said, you know what, I've joined an order. I have a teacher. There's a whole teacher apprentice kind of thing. And yes, there is historical precedence for this. Like there were some people that, did have teachers and they would be taught magic this way from, master to student kind of stuff. And a lot of orders offer this aspect of magic where you can learn from somebody else, or you can learn in groups as to how to do magic. If you feel that you might be somebody who benefits from joining an order, that's something that you have to figure out. For the most part, I would say I don't want to put a percentage on it or anything like that, but I would just say for the vast majority of us, we don't need orders. And for the most part, a lot of orders are utter shams, and they just want money. A lot of times these orders, there's really shady individuals involved in them. It's the modern world. It's tough. A lot of the things that these orders promulgate, it's available. You can find this stuff online if you really want to. But magical orders have no hold on the Western magical tradition. I'm just going to say that, right? Like they're, as much as they'll say that they're part of this lineage of Rosicrucian blah-de-blah, they have no claim to the Western magical tradition. And I would argue, and others have argued as well, that for the most part, magic was somewhat of a solo endeavor. We do have evidence that this is not the case all the time, but I would say for the most part, a lot of times it was just people doing it themselves, really. So again, being that uncle, if I was asked, do you need to join a magical order? I would say no, not unless you really want to. That's it. Take it for what it's worth. A lot of people get really hung up, particularly pertaining to orders. They get hung up with this idea of initiation and being initiated in this tradition and stuff like that. There is no one singular tradition of Western magic. I hate to say it. If the idea of you being this empty vessel that needs to be filled and needs to know when it needs to be filled via some kind of act of ceremony or some ritual or something like that is important to you, then I don't know what to tell you. I just kind of became a magician. And I did write in a diary, apparently I'm a magician now. And that was enough of a initiation for me. Some people say, you have to be initiated. There has to be some kind of change. You need to have some experience or several experiences that make you go, okay, I'm initiated. I don't think it is that important. I think just being weird is enough. Just being born weird or being interested in weird things is enough. I know it's kind of boring. I know we'd all like to have the story of I was walking down the street and then suddenly the buildings melted and I was greeted by a demon from the Ars Goetia who told me that I would become a great magician. We all want to have this experience. Or I did LSD and then I woke up in the Mojave Desert, which was very odd because I live nowhere near the Mojave Desert, and a lizard spoke to me. Now I'm a magician. It doesn't really happen like that. I really don't think that this idea of initiation is a great one. I understand where it comes from. I really do. But I think the concepts via which this idea of initiation came from, the more mystical tradition or the mysteries, that kind of stuff, that was bogged down in a lot of, I'm going to say, Mediterranean societal class-based stuff. It's 19th century looking back with very rose-colored glasses and drawing their own conclusions, which, if you haven't learned, that's the kind of stuff I want to grind into the dirt. So initiations, take them or leave them. I really don't think they're that necessary. Just make writing down why you want to be a magician your initiation and saving it. Again, that should be enough. That initial spark and you putting it down on paper, that's your initiation. Go. You're good. All right. Before you go trotting off to the bookstore or wherever to get the first bit of how you're going to become a practical practicing magician, there's some things you need to keep in mind. It's like, Doug, you've been just trying to keep things in my mind forever. I've done absolutely nothing. What the fuck, man? Too bad. Some stuff you have to keep in mind for sure. I know this seems obvious, but everybody is different. Each and every one of us is very different from the next person. I mean, this is some Fred Rogers stuff. Yeah, you're special. You're so unbelievably special. You are unique, and that's awesome. So, a beginner's guide in book form doesn't exist. There is no beginner's guide for you, unfortunately. Not unless you write it. So that's the point of magic. And that's one thing that you will be reminded of time and time again as you make your way through this journey, as you circumambulate around the temple of magic, is that, wow, you're pretty unique, and your interests there, they wax and they wane as much as the moon does, and it's all wonderful. But what goes for some people is not going to go for you, and what goes for you is not going to go for some other people. So just keep that in mind for sure. We live in a society that tries to tell us that we're all the same. We're just like everybody else. We have the same needs and wants, and all of these very broad concepts are all the same, and what matters for you matters for everybody else, and that's not true. And one of the major reasons that we think this is because of the metaphysics in which the West we are brought into. We can have these religions, we can be born into certain religions, but the fundamental metaphysics that we are given and which is hammered into our heads is that of mechanical materialism. Your number one job, henceforth, now that you've declared yourself a magician, is to be open to new metaphysics. The old idea of A plus B equals whatever you want is not going to work. And I know a lot of magic, we have to do this whole stuff where we're like, I want to do this spell, so I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and it's supposed to happen. That's kind of how we experiment. It's kind of part of magic for sure. But you are crafting yourself a new metaphysics for how your magic is going to work and what you call your magic. Okay? A lot of people I know, they say that I want to do magic, and then I give them some suggestions, and then they try these books and they're like, nothing happened. Nothing happened. It's the exact same. Magic is a process of creating your own metaphysics. I cannot stress this enough. The metaphysics that you have inherited from the Western authoritative systems does not work with magic. It might for a bit, but it will let you down ultimately. For the most part, most of us had to go through school, and we had to learn through the science books and through history classes that, we have always had this metaphysic where we think that atoms are the unthinking, not alive aspects of everything, and we live in a dead universe. I mean, some of us don't. Some people don't have this, and best of luck to them. Some people have always believed in fairies. Amazing. You got a bit of a leg up. That's cool. But for the most part, most of us have this metaphysics. And to begin with, you're going to have to start to shed this away. You're going to have to start to remove this somehow. I can't really tell you what metaphysics is best. For myself, I think that animism is a really great metaphysics to have. Idealism is pretty cool also. But whatever you find, it's got to work for you. If you craft your own, that is cool too. Not everything needs a precedent, right? But if you come into magic and say that you're going to hold the same metaphysics that you came in with, yes, the scientific method is perfect, and I'm going to use this scientific method to test whether or not magic is real and whatnot. It might work for a bit. Some of your sigils are going to come true like right away. Some of the sigils you do, it's going to be like, wow, that's really interesting. And then they're going to fail, and then they will continue to fail. And then you realize, my goodness, you might have to change yourself before things around you are going to have to start to change. It's a process. Get used to it. It's not the end of the world. For some people, a world needs to end before a new one begins. That's awesome. And I know this sounds really dour, and it's very, very serious, and I don't want people to come away thinking that starting out magic, everything's got to be in order. Absolutely not. The thing you have to do to remember always is curiosity and fun. That's it. That's the best part. So pay attention to the things that move you. If things like the Golden Dawn and things like the Lima really move you, that's awesome. I know I shit on them, but other people have found them really crucial to how they navigate and function in the world. But if they're really interesting, if tarot is interesting to you, go for it. Investigate. You need to be moved. So just pay attention to the flashes of things that make you go, oh man, I want to know a little bit more about this. And oh wow, this is something like my past. Like I really loved ancient Egypt as a kid. And so when the Greek magical papyri came around for me, it was like, I need to know more. I want to know more. And so I did. And I was like, oh, that was a really good decision to follow that as opposed to just hang in with doing these somewhat silly 19th century, I don't know, arm waving, thinking that I'm a magician. Yes, absolutely. Pay attention to the things that really move you. Tarot is cool. Astrology is cool. Rosicrucianism is cool. Alchemy is cool. What is it that really speaks to you? That when you hear about it, makes your soul just churn with anticipation. What is that? And then move towards these things. There is no one Western magical tradition. And I hate to say it, this idea that has been promulgated since the 19th century is not true. It's very spurious. If anything, the Western magical tradition is grimoire based. I'm just going to say that. But that doesn't mean that has to be where your magic comes from. So yeah, even though I don't spend a lot of time talking about these late 19th century, early 20th century conceptions of magic, which are the things when you do pick up a beginner's book on magic that they will try to get you to do, I don't know, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram or all of these weird visualizations or staring at a candle and stuff like that. I just realized that is not the Western magical tradition. That is a kind of magic, not the magic. Okay? It's just a kind. But if you found it cool, that's awesome. But speaking on that, and again, this is just a little bit of a diversion, but something I think to understand at the very beginning of this, magic is a business, particularly with this strange ad campaign that has been touted as being the Western magical tradition. A lot of these books make a lot of money. And a lot of the things that these books will tell you need to have will cost you money. It's a business. Magic is a business. Be a pirate. And by that, I don't mean like just pirating books. Come on. But make stuff. Craft things. Find workarounds and be cunning. When you start doing magic, the more cunning you are, the more you will be rewarded, I found. And it wasn't until later when I started doing the more organized magic that I was like, okay, I need this special wand. I need this special knife. I need the special things. And the years since I've stopped doing that, I've found that my magic has grown by leaps and bounds. So realize that there are a lot of people making a lot of money by doing magic. And a lot of people are offering courses, and a lot of people are offering these really expensive books, and a lot of them saying that you have to have these things. I really don't think you do. I think that for the most part, the more crafty you are, the more crafty you are in your craft, the better your craft will be. But yes, Aleister Crowley and the people that talk about Aleister Crowley are making a lot of money. And a lot of these things are literally just re-descriptions of old techniques anyway. A lot of the beginner's books of magic they're nothing new. It's just them taking other authors, a lot of them dead, most of them from the late 19th century, early 20th century, and just repackaging them and being like, here you go, magic. Cha-ching. You do not need the newest books. As inspiring as these new books are, they're mostly just redescriptions. While I am thankful that they have brought people to the Temple of Magic and it really makes people interested to try magic out, I think a lot of people think that what they're buying is the Western magical tradition, when it's not that cut and dry. Sorry to say. So here's the thing. Here's something I want you to sit with as you begin your journey. You start magic as a chaos magician. Too bad. So sad. You start your magical journey as a chaos magician, and whatever inspires you, don't go all the way in. Just take a little bit. Then when something else kind of flashes, look into it, research that a little bit more, take a little bit of what you've learned from here, take a little bit of what you've learned from there. Don't go absolutely crazy with it's tough to know because I know a lot of people, and truthfully, I see it all the time. I get these emails over a period of about 3 months. These people, they just email me constantly, about once every 2 or 3 days, just being like, hey, I'm reading this. Hey, I'm reading this. Hey, I'm reading this. And I'm just like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. And then I don't hear from them ever again because I just assume that they've burned themselves out. So yes, you can be interested in everything. Yes, everything is very, very cool regarding magic, but just slow down. Slow down. Take your time. Find the things that interest you. Spend a month on it. Then maybe the next month, look into something else a little bit different. Yeah, I would say to start off with, don't just go, okay, today, this is my first week of being a magician. I'm going to be a Rosicrucian magician. For those who don't know what that is, I hopefully will be doing an episode on Rosicrucianism one of these days, but just don't start off and be like, I'm a Thelemite. Pure and simple. I'm a Thelemite. I'm going to do the Star Ruby every day for the rest of my life. Try to stay away from those decisions earlier on. Try to just basically be a chaos magician and have that chaos toolkit that I mentioned in my chaos magic episode. This is a fairly important one, I think. It's very, very important to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean that you go around telling everybody that you're a chaos magician. I hope you didn't get confused by that. It's just that I guess what I'm trying to say here is just remain curious and be inspired and try some things, right? Try different things. Don't go all in on one thing. Don't put all your chips on 23 red, okay? Yes, you are a chaos magician to begin with. Too bad, so sad. There's something else that I think people get very tripped up on, and it's this idea that, are there born magicians? Are there people that are immediately better at doing magic? And I don't really know if there are. There might be some people who have natural aptitudes. There's a difference between talent and skill, right? I do think that there might be people who are a bit more talented at this stuff. I do not know the metrics as to how one could measure these things. Again, with this idea of getting rid of the metaphysics of materialism, that's got to go out the door. I don't know how that would be measured. I'm good at doing some things and not as good at doing other things. I have a talent towards certain things and other things I do not. Say things like scrying. I'm not the best at it. I really have to work at scrying to be good at it, but other things come far more naturally to me. So talent is different than skill. Skill is something you can work on, right? Skill is a muscle that needs to be flexed and it needs to be massaged at certain times. Talent, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's probably some people that are a little bit more talented at this stuff than other people. A lot of this comes from this idea, and I bump up against it, particularly when I do read beginner's books of magic. I try to read as many beginner books of magic as I can. I hate them, but I read them. But I do see this quite a bit. Every once in a while, and I'm not going to mention any names, but every once in a while I see an offer that they will say, some people just can't do magic. Full stop. Some people just can't do magic. Moving on. I don't know if that is necessarily true. I think pretty much magic is the underlying way in which we operate and navigate in this world. We've just fallen very far and we are trying to tell ourselves very convincingly that it's not. So therefore, I don't think anybody doesn't have access to this. I think everybody can do magic in some way. All right. So that's cool though. That's wonderful to think about, right? You're not alive unless you're breathing. And I think magic is as fundamental to us as breathing is. May seem like a platitude, but I think it's true. Speaking of books, let's get into it. 45 minutes into this episode. Oh my God. And finally going to recommend books. And I'm known for my book recommendations. I am only going to recommend 2. That's it. I just want to say up front here, these people have not paid me in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, for this entire How to Begin episode, I'm only going to recommend 2 books. And truthfully, I don't even know if you need them. I really don't know if you need them. I can recommend them, but I don't know whether these are going to be the books that are going to guide you right off the bat. So here we go. I will be talking about these 2 books, and there's no real order that one can do these in. They kind of could complement each other if this is the direction that you want to go. I think it would be somewhat helpful if this is the direction in this day and age. I'm talking 2022. Talking at the beginning of 2022. Ask me again in 5 years. I might change it a bit, but hopefully this is where I stand for the time being as a good place to start with these 2 books and these kind of practices. But I think that the key to beginning with magic should be something that is available to every single one of us. Something that we all do. And that is dreaming. Every single one of us dreams. Some of us may not remember them for the most part, but we all can dream. We literally do it every day. Well, I don't know if you have insomnia or something like that, but hopefully you are sleeping every 24 hours. You're getting some sleep there. And during that sleep, you do actually dream. So when you're starting your magical journey, I want you to dream better. Get better at dreams. Get better at recalling your dreams. And so for this, I do suggest a book by Eric Wargo called Precognitive Dreamwork and the Long Self, Interpreting Messages from Your Future. And I know that might sound a little bit disappointing. I know you want to start waving your arms about and summoning demons or drawing sigils and stuff like that. That will come. You can do it while you're doing and getting better at dreaming. But I really do think that dreams are fundamental to magic. And the idea that the subjective in some way is objective is a very, very, very important one for magic, because it is my opinion that dreams are in some way a lot of things, but one of the major things that dreams are is precognitive. You can actually see things that haven't happened yet in your dreams. So getting good at dreaming being your first practical steps at being a magician, in my opinion. And there's a variety of reasons for this. For one, yes, we all dream, every single one of us. Sometimes we dream differently, as in it might be harder for some of us to dream and remember them. For some of us, they're quite vivid and we can remember all the detail and whatnot. But what occurs when you start to pay more attention to your dreams is that there are some wonderful byproducts of this process itself. And particularly if you are using the book that I mentioned earlier, Precognitive Dreamwork by Eric Wargo. There are some steps to dreaming properly, or at least dreaming to be able to get them right, so you can write them down and go over them. And I'm not going to go through all of them because it is talked about in this book. But something that you have to keep in mind is that in order to dream better so that you can remember them better, there are things you might have to do and concessions you might have to make, which is part of the magical process. If you have a partner that sleeps next to you, and they might wake you up in the middle of the night, or you might not wake up properly, so you don't remember your dreams, you might have to sleep on the couch a couple of nights to be able to recall your dreams a little bit better. It's getting good at dreaming is a skill that I've talked about, right? It's not, for some of us, it's a talent, but for others, it's a skill. And what you will start to realize with trying to get dreams properly is that, yeah, there's going to be a ton of books that will make suggestions on how to do it properly. Not all of them work. Some of the techniques might work. So you are literally going through a bit of the magical process to teach yourself how to dream better. One of the other major reasons that I think dreams are fundamental to beginning with magic is that a lot of people give up doing magic because they don't see any kind of evidence that what they are doing is having any kind of an effect. And what one will find when they get good at dreaming and they start recording their dreams, and particularly if you go through some of the steps or the things that are brought up in Eric Wargo's book, is that indeed your dreams are precognitive and you have tangible evidence that you can see. And so what eventually happens when you see that your dreams are precognitive is that framework, that consensus reality framework that we are mostly born into, that says that time is somewhat linear and that there's no such thing as psychic abilities, that tower falls for you. There are people who have tried to debunk this idea that dreams are precognitive that have found out, holy shit, they actually are. That's a powerful thing. So, one of the major things, could this be your initiation, is when you finally see that your subjective state of dreaming has objective reality all of its own. That's fucking magical. The lattice that we have had continually built around us for everything that we have been told is a sham. And that's very empowering. And just don't take my word for it. Try it. Do it yourself. Get very good at dreaming. And another reason why I brought this book up is that it also allows you to build up this skill of going through a book and writing some things down, or at least taking notes from the book to be able to craft your own way of seeing how your dreams can be precognitive. Now, in the book, Eric doesn't really have this, like, he's got like a step towards the end of the book where he just talks about certain realities about dreaming that he finds to be true. But the process as to how to do this waking up, writing down your dreams, and then going back at a later date and reading what you wrote, and then whatever occurs then when you're rereading your stuff, that is also important to see how dreams are precognitive. There is a process, and I'm not going to give it away because you really should read this book. But that process itself is very important for a magician. Being able to read something or hear certain bits of information and to extract your process and practice out of it. Very, very important. Yes, it is not the sexiest thing in the world. Yes, it can be incredibly frustrating if remembering your dreams does not come easy to you. There are steps you can take and things you can do to help remember your dreams. You might have to adjust parts of your life. You might have to go to bed earlier. You might have to wake up in the middle of the night and then go back to bed, which might disturb your partner or things. That's magic. Too bad. There are going to be things that you do in magic that are going to inconvenience you for the most part. I mean, it's not always going to be like that. There's people that just allow magic to come into their lives. That's cool. But for the most part, I think to be a practical magician, you are going to have some things that inconvenience yourself. It might also inconvenience others. That's just how it goes. But take it for what it's worth. I do think that after one declares themselves to be a magician, and one that does want to do things practically, that actually wants to do rituals, that actually wants to do what other people call ceremonies, or I call it performances or whatnot, I think you have to get good at dreaming. And I know I've said this a lot over the last 15 minutes, but I do think it is fundamental to magic, particularly if you come straight from the metaphysics of thinking that everything is A plus B equals C, or that all matter is dead, and this kind of thing. Dreams will show you very clearly that the universe is far more magical than you have been told. And also, dreams are fun. Dreams are also just very fun, and it's wonderful, and it's great. So, however one wants to do that, just get good at dreaming. However you figure that out is up to you, but once you do, I highly suggest Precognitive Dream Work and the Long Self by Eric Wargo. Take some notes from that book, come up with a regimen for recording your dreams, and then looking back at them and seeing the moments when, yes, you did actually literally dream the future. It's fucking awesome. But what about all the other stuff? What about the spells and the witchcraft and the visualizations and the meditations and all of the stuff that you know that you want to do? The magic stuff, right? When does the magic... Dreams are all right. Dreams are just okay, but that's not really why I signed up for magic. You know, I know what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Well, I do think that there is one book that should be read for people who are beginning in magic. And it is a book that I only came across in the last 2 years, and I was very skeptical before cracking it. And then when I did, I was blown away, truthfully. I thought it was just one of the most incredible books I've read about magic, and particularly for a beginner's book, it was great. It was wonderful. And I've mentioned it many, many times on the show, but I will continue to say that the best book for beginning practical magic is a book by Aidan Wachter called 6 Ways, Approaches and Entries for Practical Magic. Before I really told people I was a magician, very few people knew, but then some people would ask me, Doug, what is the best book for magic? I would suggest about 6 books, and only segments from them. I'd be like, okay, you need to read this part from this book, and then you need to read this part from Phil Hines' Condensed Chaos. Oh, I would also read this part from... I just do this. 6 Ways by Aidan Wachter is the very first book that I read, a beginner's book, that it's like, I agree with almost all of this, not all of it, but I do think that it is a wonderful way of trying to understand how to approach beginning doing practical magic. At no point does the book tell you that if you do this thing and then this thing and then this thing, you will suddenly have this happen. It is far more gentle than that. It gives you enough of an indication as to how you might think about certain things, like meditation, or things like trance states, and how Aidan sees them. And he's never at any point telling you you need to have this happen, because, as I said, we're all different, and these things appear to us differently. My trance state is different than your trance state. My gnosis, or whatever the fuck that is going to be different than yours, which is very, very important. I do think, though, that just to keep an open mind, and I'm not saying this to disparage Aidan in any way, Aidan has descriptions for things like, he uses the word the field to talk about, I guess we would call it our reality with the spirits inside. He calls it the field. You can call it the field if you want, but Aidan is also, you don't have to use his terminology. You don't have to use his understandings. But the techniques, the approaches are the things you need to concentrate on. So I would use 6 Ways not so much as a guide, like I have to do everything the way Aidan says, because that's not the point of the book. And Aidan would agree with me. It's not the point of this book. But it allows you to contextualize somebody who has been doing magic for a long time and how magic enters their life and how they see it. And there's a lot that you can take from that. Something I mentioned to somebody not too long ago who did ask, how do I get started with magic? And then I recommended 6 Ways. And I said this, and it was a bit off the cuff, but I actually kind of believe it. I said, if you get Aidan Wachter's 6 Ways and you devote doing the magic techniques that Aidan brings up in this book, and you do them almost every day, if not every day, things like sigils and trance states and all of the fun stuff. If you do that and devote 1.5 years of that, you will probably be more experienced as a practical magician than 95% of the people who call themselves magicians. I stand by that. Aidan's book is about as close as you can get to being an effective and efficacious Practical Magician from a standing start. If you have not read any beginner books on magic and you know very little about magic and you were just going to go off of Aiden's book, it is probably the best way of getting to where you probably want to get. So that's basically it. I would say those 2 books are the books you need. And you can do the precognitive dream stuff and the dream exercises and learning how to dream better and dream recall better and writing down your dreams while you're doing the exercises that Aiden goes through in 6 ways. That can happen at the same time. You don't have to rely on one more than the other. I really do think that these 2 books complement each other quite well. Although it might not be apparent at the get-go, I do think that if I was given these 2 books when I first started out doing magic, I think that I would have been set. And I probably could have avoided a lot of frustration at trying to pick out bits from Golden Dawn rituals and grimoires that I didn't understand and all of that wonderful, crazy chaos magic stuff that, that comes with it. But I think that these 2 books are about as good as it gets for one who wants to start off in magic. A lot of other books will get mentioned for beginners. For the most part, I think that they're all garbage. Sorry. But these two are very, very good. I'm going to detour here for a second to talk about a couple of things that you will probably hear a lot of people telling you need to be very good at and should start at the very beginning of your magical journey. And that would be meditation and getting good at visualizing things in your mind, whatever your mind is. As far as the meditation stuff, meditation is very, very helpful. I do not think it is absolutely essential. It is a good thing to start off with, definitely. A lot of people really put too much onus on the meditation stuff. And I've seen some people, particularly who have been emailing me over the last little while, get very, very frustrated. They say that they're not meditating properly or they're not doing the thing. Like I started the meditation and then I slowly started to incorporate visualizations into my meditation and it's not going so well. And I'm really down on myself. And so I think that a lot of people get tripped up on the whole meditation to visualization to magic somehow happening stuff. Meditation's great. You have to figure out how to meditate properly, should you want to. Since doing my meditation episode, which I still think is, it's worth listening to, I've become a little less dogmatic about telling people that they need to start meditating. Because, for one, I now only meditate when I feel like it, which isn't every day. Some days I don't feel like meditating and I don't beat myself up about it. It should be something that complements the magic that you want to do. And if you feel like meditating, then meditate. I feel pretty good when I meditate, so I try to meditate. Do I think it is the first skill you need to know? Not so much. But it is a very helpful skill to have. Definitely. Without a doubt. It is a very great skill to have. Visualizations are good as well. They are not the point of magic. Being able to just see something in your mind and hold it there for long periods of time, while very, very helpful, that's not all of magic. But also, like meditation, it can be helpful. I know some people that cannot visualize in their mind, and it does not hinder them at all to being efficacious magicians. So take this for what it's worth. This idea of meditation, visualization equals magic is one that needs to be torn down. They are both helpful techniques. They are both great. They're pretty important if you want them to be, but it is not the be-all and end-all of how one should start doing their magic. I truly do think that dreams are more important than both, at least to start off with. All right, so you've got both of these books, or maybe you don't, but you kind of know what's in them. You've gotten very good at dreaming. You can do some sigils because you've crafted your own way of doing sigils. You're on your way. What else do you need to know at the outset and within the first, year of becoming a practical magician or witch, sorcerer, warlock, whatever you want to be? I do think that one of the best things that one can do once they, have figured out some of the things that interest them and some of the techniques that Aiden goes through in 6 ways, and you put some of those down, you're getting kind of good at them. You can kind of tell that, I feel pretty magical when I do these. I do think that in this day and age, it is fairly important to set up a bit of a spiritual hygiene regimen, which is just a way of being able to protect yourself. And now some of you might go, I went through one of those books that you didn't mention, and they said the first spell that you need to know is a banishing ritual, the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram to be exact. And I say, that's cool. All right, wonderful. I do think, though, as far as this is concerned, that banishing rituals are overused and not well understood by the majority of folks doing or promulgating them. That is a lecture for a different time. But I do think that this idea of being able to protect yourself somehow is a fairly important one. And the more you understand about being able to set up some rituals that you do that make you feel safe, that the act of doing these things maybe once a week, whether that be, lighting incense in a certain part of where you live and just going to the corners of the room. I'm not going to specifically lay it out, but perhaps, doing a bath in which you pour in some vinegar and maybe some crushed up frankincense or something like that. Whatever it is, wherever you find these from, I think that just setting up a regimen in which you do these things is maybe one of the first steps at learning to create your own magical process. And this is actually far more fun than it sounds, because that can be any number of things. It could be rings, it could be talismans, it could be a scroll that you keep in your pocket, it could be a crystal or something like that. But if you can figure out ways in which you feel protected and you feel somehow that you have a process of several rituals or several techniques that involve grounding, being all right with where you are, getting the bad energy or the transient spirits, whatever you want to call it, however you decide to approach your magic, that as long as you have a little something set up for yourself that you do every once in a while, that gives you the feeling of safety and protection. Not just one thing, not just a banishing ritual, although banishing rituals can be part of it, but go hard. Go figure out the things that truly make you feel invincible and/or safe. Up there with the emails as to how do I start is an email I get, or at least something that I get a lot through people reaching out to me, is this: do I have to do stuff every day? Do I have to do the meditation every day? Do I have to do this banishing ritual every day? Do I have to do magic every day? Do I have to do these blessings and prayers and stuff? I don't know. Do you? Ask yourself. Do you think that if you not doing something every day is going to make you less effective? That is a question you have to ask yourself. For myself, I do things every day. Recently, my major magical operations or interactions have been quite shit, but I still do things every day. Some small things every day. I don't know you. I don't know what's best for you. But if we are going to go with this whole idea of talent and skill being something, skills are something that need to be worked on, right? I know we live in a very busy world, and some of us can't do things every day. Sometimes we don't feel like doing things every day. I just want each and every one of you to get to a place where you do not feel stressed out about your magic, because that does not help you at all. When you start stressing about your magic, that is when magic stops being effective. Magic is an extension of you. It is part of you. It is an appendage. It is the air you breathe, the blood that flows through you. Getting a little bit Yoda-ish right now. Anyways, don't stress about magic, especially at the very beginning of your journey. Magic should not be something that puts you out, okay? So do you need to do it every day? That's something that you need to ask yourself and something you need to come up with. And I know you're going to figure it out. I know you will. All right, I'm just looking through my notes here. Some things I'm just going to list off very quickly. Because I do think that they are somewhat important for people starting out. Spend more time outside. Truthfully, more time outside. I'm not going to use the N-word, which is nature, because frankly, nature doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. Nature only exists to cultures that have separated from it. That's a whole other podcast episode. But just spend more time outside, whether you're in the city, having your dusty office, library, spell room, that's all well and good, but I do think that there is something about being outside and having other shit around you and just kind of calming things down and getting something other than a television or a screen beaming things into your brain. I think that that's important. I don't know what it does. The more time I spend outside just doing things, for some reason, my magic grows by leaps and bounds. Take it for what it's worth. That should be the subtitle of this episode. Just take it for what it's worth. Here's another thing, and I might have just touched on it, but you know yourself better than everybody else. You know what you are good at. There is no guiding line that people can say that if you do not have this skill, you cannot go to this skill. A lot of books, particularly even ones that I might say are pretty good, something like Communing with Spirits by Martin Coleman says, you cannot do this thing until you've done this thing. Hogwash, you know yourself better than everybody else. Everything is a guideline. There is no one thing that you have to do. Magic should breed self-confidence. I really do think this. You should be somewhat confident in the magic that you do, even if it's not as effective as you'd want it to be at the outset. What works for other people might not work for you. You know what works for you. You can almost feel it. And if you do feel it, that is the best guiding force that you have, your intuition. I talk a lot about intuition on my Patreon. And I'm going to just bring it up a little bit here because it is important. It is one of those things I don't think can be taught. You can't just read a book and then your intuition gets better. It is one of those skills that you probably were born with and it was really, really good. And then as you start questioning every fucking thing that you do, because that's just the lattice that we've erected, or that's been erected around us. When you start to find your intuition again, you will know it and it will speak to you far better than anybody else will. That is a glorious thing. You have your own agency. Your intuition helps with this. Nobody knows you better than you. All right, the penultimate thing is just something that I mentioned near the beginning. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. If you're not jiving with something and it feels like you're trying to force yourself, challenges are good, but if you're not having a good time, then don't do the thing. You will have doubts at certain points through certain processes, but at some point, you have to be brutally honest with yourself, and that can even go back to what you wrote initially as to why you started magic. If you go back, you see how things have changed, or if they haven't, and you have said up until that point, you have always been honest with yourself, then you're on the right track. But you have to be brutally honest with yourself through everything. Start as you mean to go. And finally, the last little bit of advice as to how to start doing magic is the most important by far. By far, being honest is very important. But the most important thing is have fun. Right? Have fun. This is really interesting, far out, crazy stuff. But if you're not having fun and you're not enjoying yourself while doing it, I don't really know what the point is. Yes, there's all this talk of like gnosis and truth seeking and all of that great stuff. But if you are not enjoying what you are doing, then I don't know if magic can be for you. That sounds very gatekeeper-ish, but I really think you should have fun. Whatever your definition of fun is. For myself, I enjoy being alone and reading books, and there's these crazy things called grimoires and just trying some of the stuff and then adapting it and doing weird stuff. And I'm going to try this thing from this really ancient scroll of Greco-Egyptian Hellenistic magic. It sounds weird. It's kind of strange, but I'm going to give it a shot. Oh shit, things didn't go the way I thought it would go. Whoops, well, let's try again. That's my idea of fun. And I love that. And I always have. From the get-go, right when I started doing magic. That was great. It's always been about having fun for the most part. Everything else that happens, like the results are great. Results are fine. Sure. But having fun, that's the most amazing thing of all. I mean, especially if you do a whole leaning into the dream stuff. I love when I dream about something and then I'm like, I should take that little thing that happened in the dream and I'm going to do that in real life. Because usually weird things happen. Trust me, that's so much fun. So however your definition of fun is, as long as your magic complements that, I think that is the best thing. That is the most important thing. Yes, personal growth is fun. Yes, self-transformation is good. Yes, the mystical experience is great. Yes, all of the things, the ancient ways that magic has always been engaged with is all well and good. But as long as you can bring that in and make it part of just how you enjoy your life, at least this one, which up to now we only get one of them so far. There hasn't been a ton of evidence, but there actually has. But anyways, you know what I'm saying. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then I don't really know if there's a point. I don't really know if magic is for you. If you're not enjoying it, the fuck out of it. Sure, it's hard. Sure, it's frustrating. Man, I'm not getting the things that I want. But if you're having fun in the Temple of Magic, if it's something you really look forward to doing, that is the best spot of being. No matter what all of the other books tell you, I don't really hear a lot of people talking about having fun with magic. But it is the most important thing, no matter what anybody else says. There's one thing to take from this episode. It's just the sheer joy of starting out to do magic. That's your Philosopher's Stone. That's your phylactery. That's your cauldron brew. Your elixir. It's got to be enjoyable. It's got to be fun. It brings you joy, and it makes you more of a person by doing it. There you go. Make sure you have fun. Because doing magic, doing it well and doing it properly, things can get very spooky. Things are going to get very, very weird. Things might even get scary. I know they have for me. Yep. Things get scary. It's all part of the package. And all I can say to that is good. You'll see, and you'll understand soon enough. But there's another thing, and we're coming to the end here, is that most people, the vast majority, they lose interest in magic. Chances are, probably about, I'd say 95% of you that are listening to this episode right now, in the not too distant future, magic will have no part of your life whatsoever. This is just a fad for you. It's something that is a momentary infatuation. Might last a year, might last 2 years, maybe even 5 years. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. You might even give it a try for a little bit, be a practical magician for a little bit, maybe be one of those occult philosophers for a little bit. That's all good. It's wonderful, cool, and then you just kind of move on with your life. There's nothing to be ashamed of with that. Magic is by no means easy. It is fun, but it is by no means easy. It gets less easy the more people know that you're a magician because, well, obviously, the world is geared and designed to make you as a magician think that what you are doing is stupid and dumb and foolish, childish, delusional, all of these things. And that pressure never, ever goes away. As time goes on and the more you do magic, you might be more confident as a magician, but there will be times when the doubt hangs very heavy and the societal pressures even heavier. I get it. It's fine. Do not be ashamed to just be interested in magic for a little bit. I would just hope, and I have said this because I do get these emails from people. They say, Doug, I can't do this anymore. It's dumb. It's not doing anything for me. I merely tell them one thing. And I say, I know. I understand. I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise, but I just want you to keep one gift from this momentary infatuation with magic. I want you to keep your curiosity. That is it. That is the one gem you need to keep with you, is to stay curious and open-minded. That's it. I really hope you enjoyed your time in the Temple of Magic. And so I have to wrap this one up and put a bow on it. I don't really know how to close up here. That's not going to sound like a platitude of some kind, or at least highly cliche, except to say, you've got this. If this is something that really calls to you, you've got this. Trust your intuition. Have fun. Be honest. Magic is life. And just like life, it's a journey. Where you start is not where you're going to end up in 5 years. If it becomes a lifelong pursuit, where your life ends is going to be very, very different from where your magical journey began, which is amazing, truthfully. But I know that if you've picked out the things in this hour-and-a-half conversation I've had, basically talking to myself here, but to you, the listener, if you picked out the parts that really, really touched you, and you hold those sacred, and you keep them with you along your journey, then I know you're going to be a wonderful magician. And I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. All right, that's it for this one. I really hope that it didn't come off as overly cheesy, but guess what? Even if it did, get used to it. Magic, particularly magic in what we were calling the West, is so cheesy. There's so much. It's ridiculous. But if you have yet to find that out for yourself, consider this a warning. But other than that, I just want to let everybody know that you got this. Things are going to be okay. It's not terrifying, although it will get terrifying at some points, but that's how you know it's working. Anyways, for more information, head to whatmagicisthis.com. There you will find some show notes to this episode. The show notes, there's not going to be too many of them for this episode for fairly obvious reasons, but there'll be a few, particularly for drawing attention to the two books that I mentioned. Those can be found at whatmagicisthis.com. Also on my website, you will find a link to my Twitter account, my Instagram account, as well as my Facebook account. I'm not totally active on Facebook. I'm somewhat active on Instagram, at least getting a little bit better at it. And I'm fairly active on Twitter. I waste a lot of my day on Twitter. Not a lot, but probably more than I should. But I try to put up some interesting stuff and draw attention to things that I think are kind of cool. But yes. For all my social media stuff, please head to whatmagicisthis.com. If you enjoy the show, please tell a friend. Tell a friend, and perhaps they'll tell a friend, and then they'll tell a friend, and that's how this whole word of mouth thing happens. I don't know if you guys know what this is, but it's a thing. It's a real thing. I don't do a ton of promotion for my show. I literally depend on people telling their friends that, hey, there's this really interesting show. You should probably check it out. So if you enjoy the show, please do that. Also, if you enjoy the show, try to leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher. I think they have a star clicky thing on Spotify now. So yes, the star clicky stuff is all well and good, but if you really enjoy the show, please write a couple of words about me, a couple of sentences. Don't go crazy and write, I don't know, paragraph after paragraph about how much you love the show. I mean, I would enjoy that. I don't know if other people would, but yeah, if you do enjoy the show, please leave a review where you can. People do read those reviews. So if you enjoy the show and you say so, somebody else might be like, hey, I'll check it out. And I've got a new listener, which is wonderful. Do you think that I'm doing something kind of cool and pretty important and you want to show your support for the show? Well, now you can. I have a Patreon account. That is patreon.com/whatmagicisthis, or head to whatmagicisthis.com and click on any one of the Patreon links there. They're all over the place. I make sure you know that I've got a Patreon account because it's how I make my living. It is my job, and it's tough. Tough sledding these days. I mean, I don't want this to be a sob story, but, you know, it's tough getting people to register that you're doing something that you've wanted to do your entire life, and hopefully others find that it's something that they want to support. And I think that my Patreon is pretty special because I don't just do that thing where, you know, you get the episode a little bit earlier, or you get a bonus episode where it's just like a little bit more of the interview with the person. No, I give you full episodes of totally new content. Things like full episodes on saints like Saint Cyprian or Baphomet or Hermanubis, to episodes about how I practice magic, episodes about my favorite grimoires, or even books that I think that you might want to have on magic. Hell, I even do full videos, full long videos. I just released a video last month, not too long ago, about knives and swords and how they pertain to Solomonic magic, which is a magic that I am very enthusiastic about. But yeah, that was a 40-minute video. And it's not just a video of me talking at a camera. I show you things. The videos are a wonderful little jaunt. So yeah, I think my Patreon is a pretty exceptional thing. You're getting more of What Magic Is This? Besides the 2 to 3 episodes that I produce monthly for the podcast, Patreon has way more. And it's only $7 a month. That is all I am asking for. That's nothing. That's a fancy drink. That's 2 boxes of Kleenex. That's, I don't know, a used book. $7 is all I am asking for. And yes, that is at patreon.com/whatmagicisthis. If you are a fan of the podcast and you want to support, but you're not totally enthused with the whole platform of Patreon, I have a PayPal me link all over. They're all over What Magic Is This. So click one of those links and you can donate any amount of money. That's $5, $10, $20, $500, any and all donations made through PayPal go straight back into just making this podcast run. It's getting more and more expensive as time goes on. I have to pay for a whole schwack of things, including website hosting and podcast hosting. It's a business. It's a whole to-do. And so any and all money donated through the PayPal goes straight back into the podcast. I don't see any of that. It just helps keep the fires on. Here's the thing, though. You don't get any of the exclusive content that I'm releasing through Patreon. Patreon is where I want to see you. It is wonderful. It gives you access to a Discord server, which is great to ask questions, and just a fantastic community. So the choice is yours. You can support the show via Patreon. You can support the show via PayPal, or you can just listen to the show and give me a thumbs up from a distance, that kind of thing. Or you can purchase a What Magic Is This t-shirt, because I now have some merchandise for sale. Head to whatmagicisthis.com, go up to the menu and click on merchandise, and you can find t-shirts, mugs, stickers, pins, tote bags, fridge magnets, all of that stuff is available. People are loving the t-shirts. There's about 6 designs up there, and each one is pretty sweet. So yeah, if you're rocking a What Magic Is This t-shirt and somebody stops you, they'll be like, hey, what magic is this? And you'll say, it's the greatest podcast I've ever heard in my entire life. And maybe they'll start to listen to it. So if you want to show your support for What Magic Is This, a great way of doing that is grabbing yourself a t-shirt or a coffee mug. I just got some coffee mugs for Christmas, and they're wonderful. I love them. I use them every day. Yep. So that's it. 3 ways to support the show. 1, merchandise. 2, PayPal. Or 3, the place I really want to see you is Patreon. $7 a month. Tons of exclusive content. However, all of these things are available at whatmagicisthis.com. So that's it for this one. I hope that I've given some perspective that is in some way helpful. And yeah, starting off in magic is not such a terrifying thing. It should be like a fool's leap. It should be done without fear of failure or lust of results, because I do think that the world is inherently magical and everything we do is in some way magical. So it's just you acknowledging that this is real in some way. And so just to broken record this one, be honest with yourself, have fun, and follow your intuition. And things should be okay. All right, that's it for this one. I've talked here for about an hour and a half. I try not to make these episodes too long because, it's just one person talking, and I have a hard time listening to one voice for more than 45 minutes. So thank you so much for hanging in there for this one. I love each and every one of you. I know it's going to be okay, and I know you're going to have fun. So we'll see you on the next one. Until then, I want you to stay healthy, stay hopeful, and stay luminous. We will talk at you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.